more on this prisoner exchange. Let's bring in Richard Stoll. He's a professor of political science at Rice University, which is in Houston, Texas. Richard, there was a lot of talk about this prisoner swap for some time now. There was enormous pressure on the Biden administration to get this done. WNBA stars used their platform to really apply pressure. Can you talk to us about some of the things that were standing in the way of this swap?
I think the biggest things standing in the way of the swap are, first of all, that the U.S. wanted Paul Whelan as well. And it could very well be the case that the Russian government was, how shall I put it, a little more preoccupied with things in Ukraine. I assume that President Putin had to approve this swap. And as we know, he's been pretty busy. So these things sometimes take a lot of time, you know, going back and forth and before they settle in on what the final deal will be.
We're looking now at pictures of Brittney Griner, but prior to that, we were looking at Paul Whelan, and we heard from him in Tony's report, obviously very disappointed he wasn't a part of this. Why do you think that is? Why do you think he wasn't included in the swap, and what's it going to take to bring him home?
I think that they feel that he was a spy. And Brittney was caught with what we know to be a small amount of, let's call them drugs. So I think in their mind, at least, those are two very different crimes. Now, most people, including myself, don't believe that Whelan was actually involved in spying. So they may, in a sense, be making that up. But to let him go for what would have to be viewed as a very serious crime versus what she was convicted of, you know, their argument would be, you know, you need to do a lot more. This guy did terrible things, et cetera, et cetera. Again, I'm not saying any of that is true. I'm just saying they don't want to look like they're giving in to the United States for and letting go someone they argue committed a very, very serious crime.
Richard, you're in Houston. Give us a sense of what the reaction's been like there. And then also, as Tony pointed out, the sports world obviously celebrating this, but not all of the sports world. You've got a football player in Dallas who kind of popped off about how unhappy he was that Whelan wasn't a part of this, and then retracted that a bit later. But can you give us a sense of reaction, and what do you think this does for the Biden administration?
Well, I think that most of the reaction is positive. Again, of course, even if you think this was a great deal, that doesn't mean you don't want Paul Whelan released and regret that he was not part of the deal. So I think for the Biden administration, whether we're talking about the city of Houston, the state of Texas, or the United States, you know, this gives them at least a bit of a positive boost. Hey, they managed to get this done. She's coming home. That's great. How long that boost lasts and how big it is, those are other questions. My guess is the boost isn't going to be that big, and it's not going to last for that long.
Can you talk about what this might mean for dialogue between the United States and Russia? Obviously, they've been at loggerheads over Ukraine. And normally, when these types of prisoner swaps come about, there's not a lot of details released. In this case, though, it's much celebrated. There's a lot out there. What do we read into all of that?
Well, I think what I suspect will happen is that certainly on the part of the United States, and perhaps even on the part of Russia, they will say, well, we worked that out, that swap out. Maybe we should talk a bit more now about other things. That doesn't mean that, I'll be a little silly here, that the Biden administration will tell Russia, you really should stop fighting Ukraine, and the Russians will say, yeah, okay, we'll do that. But, you know, regardless of what you think of Russia, and even if you don't like a lot of the things that they do, I think having an open line of communication is always a good idea. So hopefully what will happen is that line of communication will be open a bit more, and perhaps there will be discussions about a variety of other issues as well.
Can you also talk to us about the UAE's role in all of this? Obviously, this gets them a lot of ink as well.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we know there were meetings. At least I haven't seen anything that talks about exactly what went on. But I think they come away because they are a somewhat of a trusted partner for both the U.S. and Russia. And this enhances their prestige, even if people say, well, okay, they helped, but, you know, it wasn't the thing that put it over the top. Nevertheless, they stood up and helped and tried to work with both sides. So I think they come out of this feeling pretty well. And I think it probably enhances their reputation.